All right, guys. So it's Copper Cutlass. I am behind the camera. I got it on the tripod. What I did today was we wanted to flush the oiling system. My Wii is like, I was talking with my buddy. I consulted with a few friends, and we determined that probably flushing the oiling system with cheap oil would be advantageous just to get whatever was in there out, because there was a lot of stuff in the oil pan, which I think the little chunk of silicone that found its way into the oil galley was probably from the rear main seal, because you have to dab the ends of the Ford type rear main, and that's the only way that could get past the pickup. So I think that's what was going on there. But the little chunk of silicone was not the problem. I think it was our oil pump. You know, we never went back and put the old oil pump back on after we put the Melling, the high volume, the MHV 55, whatever it is, on there, which is out of the J-headed 350, because that's brand new. It's only got like 20 passes on it. That's in here. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to turn the engine over, and I'm probably going to move this up a hair just so you guys can see a little bit better what the pressure gauge is going. And I'm going to talk about a couple of things while I'm behind here. So we're at like 55, and this is a hammer drill. So if we put it on like the hammer drill setting, we'll actually hit 60, and it's got more torque. That's actually like probably 60 something, because halfway between 55 and 75, that's 25. Half of 24 is 12, 62. So it'd be 62 and a half pounds of oil pressure approximately, just by the rough math figures. So another thing I want you guys to look at is how low the RPM is going to be on this drill and how the oil pressure is going to come up. So I'm going to kind of mimic cranking speed here. Shot up to 20 right away, and it's still climbing. It's going to make its way up to 50. And you can hear how low the RPM is, and I'm going to back it up a bit so you guys can actually see how slow the drill is actually turning. So that's good. So earlier when I put the old oil pump on, and I wish I would have taken a video then, I had to keep this thing at RPM just to hit roughly like 40 pounds. If we determine that the halfway point between 50 and 75 is about 62 and a half, that means that I had about 37 and a half pounds of oil pressure, and that's at constant RPM, and it took a while for that to come up. So I think it was actually our oil pump, and I'm going to dissect the oil pump and show that here in a little bit, but I'm going to have to pause it. But I just wanted to show you guys what we had going on. So we are stealing from Peter to pay Paul. We are taking the oil pump from the J-headed 350 for this. And this engine ultimately at the moment is going to be the engine to put back in the car, just because of everything going on. Money is tight, and I have to pay my machine shop bill. And we know that that's good. That engine's good. Despite the cylinder sleeve and all that shit, like, we know that engine's good. So if we put it back together, it's going to be just as good. That engine already was a part once for the oil pump issue, similar to this, just on a different end. But I just thought this would be a really interesting point to share. And also, at the max operating RPM of this drill with 4 quarts, it would constantly feed the system and circulate. So the drain back isn't nearly as big of an issue as you would think. Anything under like 4 quarts, actually no, sorry, I take that back, 5 quarts. Anything under like 5 quarts, you're going to hit a certain point and you're going to start aerating the system and you hear it. So when I would put in the oil filter, I wouldn't pre-fill it, and you can hear it like sputtering, like that air is working its way out of the system. And that's also another reason why you should pre-fill your oil filter, is because you can't compress air in an oiling system. So what's going to happen is for maybe a split second or two, that air is going to run through the bearings. But aerating the oiling system is a very real thing, especially when you're talking about windage and stuff like that. You know, you get all these bubbles in your oil because you're agitating it, and that's not good. So that's why you see situations where people run crank scrapers and really deep sub oil pans to keep the oil away from the crank to not agitate the oil. At least that is my understanding. In this system, I always ran 6 quarts, not 7, and that was to just be on the safe side. So I'm going to go ahead and cut this video out right now. I'm going to take this oil pump apart and see if we see anything. So we'll face this towards the bench. I think I showed you guys enough here on what's going on. All right, guys, hopefully I do my best to capture this because I'm working with my tripod. And so I took the Kenny Bell oil pump apart. So something neat about this is that they had stacked stock gears with this bronze like spacer. I hope it's caught like in the video. Like I'm trying to look back here. Okay, cool. So there is a weld in here that failed, okay? And there is bluing on this gear, meaning it was overheating. You can't really see it. I mean, you might. Let me see if I can get it on the camera. There's like some bluing right here, which is burnt. So that is either from the weld, but also there are some splines that are gone. Like this was clearly like a press fit deal. This was a custom made pump by Kenny Bell. Well, not really Kenny Bell. I think it was Dave Smith or Dale Smith Engineering. They ran a pro stock car back in the day for Oldsmobile. But the weld failed. So it's the weld is like in there. I don't know how good you guys will be able to see it, but it broke off and the nub of it is left right there. And I think that's actually why my oil pressure dropped, because this is the main driven shaft. The other two just spin. There's no welds. It has its stationary pin on here, the bypass valve, and everything else moved. But at this point, this pump is technically garbage. The ends of the gears are chewed up. They're not very good. They don't look good. Some of the knurling is gone, so it's like you really can't see it, but it's like knurled, ground, and there is just minor shrapnel in here that, you know what? I think a lot of the shrapnel that I was seeing in my oil was probably from the pump itself. So just that's kind of a good thing that we decided not to run it, but it's just really, really interesting because, again, yeah, just a stressed, broken weld. I mean, this oil pump has got to be every bit of almost 40 years old. I got it from a classic Oldsmobile member. I hope I can mention his name, Joe's W31. The pump did its job for the most part. I think after we blueprinted it and kicked up the pressure, that's probably what put it over the threshold. Because up until this was all taken apart, everything worked good. And the main reason why we readjusted the relief valve was because on the big end of the track, I wasn't seeing more than 55 pounds of oil pressure. And I'm turning 7,000 RPM. But we've also kind of technically debunked the fact that you need 10 pounds of oil pressure per RPM. And I think in drag racing, you're at that high RPM for such a short amount of time, depending on the type of racing you're doing, that rule isn't as critical if you're doing like NASCAR racing, where you're going to be constantly hanging it up at 7,000, 8,000, 9,000 RPM, whatever it may be. And that's probably why when I took this engine apart, all the engine bearings looked great. And by take it apart, I mean the initial time for the freshen up, which we didn't really freshen it up. The only thing we installed new was cam bearings because we cleaned the block. And, you know, my buddy Dave, 67 Cutlass Freak, did a little bit more work on the cylinder heads, bigger valves. I think he did a little bit more porting on it. He raised the roof a little bit more. And, yeah, I mean, it is what it is. But clearly our smoking gun here is this broken weld, and at this point, this is just no good. We're gonna kind of just hang it up. It was a really cool piece for what it was, but it did its job when it did, and I'm glad that this didn't happen like a day of racing, because it's like, okay, I still got oil pressure. I mean, this thing would still build oil pressure, but it would labor to build like 40. Like I was saying earlier in the video, I would have to hang the RPM to build 40 pounds of oil pressure, but that's because one gear wasn't turning and it was just trying to go past that gear to build pressure. So we had a restriction, I think, in my mind. Without this gear turning and just this one, we were trying to push oil past all of these not turning and pumping, which in turn gave us low oil pressure. We had one really big restriction there. So, yeah, with that being said, guys, we're going to move forward. We're going to leave the oil pump that we took out of the J-headed 350. I have to pick that engine up from the machine shop hopefully next weekend. And at this point, I'm going to take my time to put that together. But next weekend also, I'm going to get together with my buddy. We're going to work on my engine run stand, and we're going to hopefully within the next 2 weeks have some run stand time on this, and hopefully by week number 3 it will be back in the car running and driving, and that would give us a suitable amount of time to do some track testing. And if everything goes good, then we will have this out for the next point race. If not, we're going to run the Bonneville again. I'm not going to stress about it. So I'm just glad that we found something that was conclusive as far as the issues go. So it wasn't anything internal, because I'm worried about like, oh, was it this? Was it that? No, this right here, these broken parts tell me everything. So on that note, we'll let you guys go. Share, like, subscribe, follow me on Instagram at Copper Cutlass, and hit the like button, share. Obviously, we've had a hell of a ride this summer, but I am taking it on the chin. I'm taking it with a grain of salt. I'm learning a lot. Far more than probably any other year racing. So I'm not going to take this summer for granted. It's been rough. My wife is recovering very well. She's starting to walk. She's actually outside right now enjoying a day beer because it's Sunday, fun day. House chores are done. I worked on my buddy Dave's car. I'm going to put some pictures up on this thing of that work. It's a badass car. Needed a couple of touch-up spots, but hey, we'll let you guys go. Hope you guys have enjoyed the ride.